So this is Pastor John Piper's comments on Yeshua's parable on the rendering that we just read. He continues, fasting is for times of yearning and aching and longing. But the bridegroom of Israel is here. After 1,000 years of dreaming and longing and hoping and waiting, he is here. Let me pause and interject just very briefly. So far, he's right on the nose, right on the money. Don't have any disagreements with him here. In ancient Israel, particularly in Second Temple period times which Yeshua and the disciples lived, Judaism saw fasting as connected to mourning. It was an indicator of a time of sorrow, and so interestingly, the disciples of John who question Yeshua, how come your disciples don't fast? And Yeshua says, can they fast when the bridegroom's with them? When the bridegroom's gone, then they'll be able to mourn. And so he interposes the word mourn with fasting in the rendering, if you didn't catch it earlier. And so that's what we know. Fasting and mourning were kind of correlated. They conjured up the same idea in the Jewish mind of that day. So let's keep going. And of course, let me pause. We can't lose sight of the fact that what Yeshua was telling them was he was revealing that I am the bridegroom, right? You, Israel, are the bride, and I'm the bridegroom. I'm right here. Why would you fast and mourn when the celebrated bridegroom, the long-awaited marriage, is taking place before your very eyes, right? I'm right here, and you can celebrate the wedding. You can celebrate the bride and the bridegroom coming together. So don't mourn, don't fast. The time will come, and of course we know after Yeshua left, then persecution heated up. And yeah, there's a lot of time to mourn and fast then, right? Because there's so much persecution and martyrdom going on and things like that. Pastor John Piper continues, the absence of fasting in the band of disciples was a witness to the presence of God in their midst. So Yeshua's disciples had spent enough time with him to catch on to this idea that here is the long-awaited Messiah of Israel, the one that has been prophesied of old, the one that Moses spoke about, the one that Moses wrote about. And now is the time to celebrate. We're doing things that are radically different because now we are experiencing the hope of Israel right before our very eyes. And so the disciples of John were catching this. Remember, John's in prison. And so he's hearing of this Yeshua, and he's certain that Yeshua must be the one that is coming, but he's just a little puzzled over Yeshua's behavior, right? Yeshua's, the rumor is, or it's not really a rumor, it's true, but Yeshua's been spoken of as hanging out with Gentiles and sinners and tax collectors and prostitutes and drinking wine and he's just having a merry old time, and yet Israel's under, Rome's ugly thumb, and what gives? So John's just got to make sure. Are you the one, or should we be looking for someone else? Okay, so let's continue with Pastor Piper's comments. He's now going to talk about the patching part of the parable. The patch of unshrunk cloth, right, in Yeshua's parable, and the new wine, they represent the new reality that has come with Jesus. Now, Pastor Piper is correct in overlapping the patch part of the parable with the wine part of the parable, or the unshrunk cloth, right? They they say the same thing. It's kind of a form of tautology where you use two different stories or two different tales or anecdotes to Yeshua often did this. He would say the kingdom of God is like, and then he would say something like a mustard seed, blah 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 blah. The king, and again I tell you, the kingdom of God is like, and he would give a second parable right back to back with a first parable, or two or three back to back. And he's really saying the same thing, just repeating himself, but using kind of a stylistic way of saying it, just so it's not just repetition right on top of one another. So the two parts of the parable here are identical, that they mean the same thing. They're carrying the same meaning. And so Pastor Piper's picking up on that as well. And so he says that both of them represent this new reality that has come with Jesus. And what is it? The kingdom of God is here. Now, I don't fully disagree with Pastor Piper on this part.